SJ. Welcome to Mvskoke Radio, your weekly source for tribal and community news, interesting guests and discussions, plus a local events calendar.
Our ceremonial ways.
Now, I understand there are 5 items that are the subject of this activity here.
Yes, the current repatriation that I'm working on, they are items that would be tied to one of our medicine societies, and they were collected here. I can't recall right off the top of my head what year, but a lot of the times when a collector takes possession of an item, they don't keep records because they kind of know they're doing something illegal. And then when they pass it on to the museum, it's no fault of the museum, but they just don't have that provenance of exactly how it was obtained or where. But in this case, we know the makers of these certain items, and we know that they were people in our community.
Now, would you classify these artifacts as being stolen or under the table kind of commercial deals? How would you characterize that?
It's kind of a case-to-case thing. Like when we were relocated into this area, a lot of the times you did what you had to do to feed your family. So that might be the most expensive thing that you had, or the most important thing, but if you could feed your children, you might have sold it. It might have been stolen. It might have been traded. We don't know, and that's part of the why the people that collected them in the first place, the artifact collectors, they didn't keep records, and like I said, it's kind of a case by case.
So when an item is being repatriated, how does that initially begin? Like with these few items coming from the Gilcrease, was it like they contacted you and said, "Do these belong to you guys?" or how does that work?
We kind of knew that they had some items that belonged to us, and my youngest daughter, actually got her braces that day, and she was kind of feeling kind of down about it once she seen them, and I decided to take her to a museum, and we just asked, and the museum set us up a meeting, and we came back and did what's called a collections review. And then I initiated the repatriation process by identifying the items that were ceremonial, and then put in our request, and that's how it began.
Now, was the federal law invoked here? What is it? Native American Graves Repatriation Act, I believe, something like that.
Yes, that's part of the process of doing it. The different museum systems, federally funded systems, they are supposed to make a catalog of any human remain that could be, they're supposed to be all remains that they have, any associated funerary objects, ceremonial items, and upon your request, you're supposed to be able to access those. And then you are the one that determines whether they are cultural patrimony or a ceremonial item, and then you can file a claim to repatriate those items through that NAC process.
So these items in this press release says 3 false faces and 2 turtle rattles. What classification are those?
That's where I kind of have a problem with the NAGPRA law, because sometimes items can fall into both categories. They would definitely be ceremonial items, but a turtle rattle could be patrimony, and they could fall into both, because a cultural or a ceremonial item would be an item that was only used for ceremony by certain people, and a item of patrimony, it could be used or made or not really possessed by one certain person. So in our culture and your culture, we have the when we shake hands, when we do stomp dance. So there might be certain sets of shells that are ceremonial, but there are certain sets that are made for, say, just to recreational, like anybody could use them. So that's where I have a problem with the law, because I think it needs to be refined a little bit.
My colleague here is a shell shaker and
Yes, sir.
has some interesting insight on those kinds of items. The Gilcrease Museum has a pretty good reputation as far as its collection of Native American art and artifacts and other things like that. And from my contacts, they've been quite willing to talk to us about different things. Now, when you approached the museum, what was their reaction when you brought this subject up and said, "This is what we want to do"?
Well, they were actually pretty excited that we were there after I identified who I was, and they went to great lengths to make sure that they worked with us, and I got in contact with the proper people there at the museum.
So it seems like that these items have been in the hands of the Gilcrease for probably 50 or 60 years or so, and you and your daughter were just in the museum and had noticed it. What caught you guys' eye compared to anybody else that would have seen that?
The items that we were interested in, they aren't for regular display, and they weren't on display. I think I was probably maybe a teenager, early 20s maybe, when someone said that they thought that they had items like that. And it just kind of came to me that day to ask about it. And yeah, like I said, they were very open to showing us what they had.
Were they at all confused or had misinformation about where exactly those items had come from? Were you able to give them any identifying information about it?
There was a couple of things that were clarified that day, but for the most part, on our items, they knew what they had.
And so, how does this repatriation process go? So, have you guys received those back? Or are you still in the process of following the laws and whatnot? Or where are you at in this?
The process is still ongoing. So we were at the museum and we made our collections review. We were shown several items, Iroquois items, and I identified the items that were culturally affiliated to us or ceremonially affiliated, and notified them that I would like to put in a repatriation claim on those certain items. And then the provenance was pretty clear on those items, and then they would send like a template letter or this is the way this situation worked. They sent a template letter to me I filled out our information and cited ceremonial items, and that I was interested in doing a NAGPRA claim. And then once on their end, once it was processed, it was listed in the National Register. And what that does, it gives anyone else that might have a claim to those items a chance to also put in a claim. And then it'll be 30 days from the time that it went into the National Register, and then we should be able to repatriate our items.
So, do you guys have to have any kind of appropriate transportation for getting these items from point A to point B, or do you have to store them a certain way? What kind of precautions do you guys have to take when transferring these items?
This repatriation in particular, we would go down and collect them by hand and bring them back. Well, I did a repatriation with the Smithsonian in D.C., and it was human remains. And boarding the plane was a little difficult, but the museum provided all the documentation. That individual was put into my custody, almost like a child welfare case. I instructed the TSA people that I needed my own line open, and that was a little difficult until I told him, I pulled one guy to the side and I told him what I was carrying, and then I had my own line opened. If they have any questions, you can request your own private room, and you yourself open the item and show them what it is exactly in the container, and then you're ushered through on your way home.
Let me take that question a step further. Now, in the process of returning these items, is there some spiritual considerations included, like smudge them or purify them? Is any of that come into play?
Yes, on the faces in particular, I had done a repatriation before, helped out with one, and when they were returned to the matron of that medicine society, we did have I guess you could say, a welcoming home or welcoming back to our community for them. It wasn't like a big advertised thing. It was just for the faces and the members of that medicine society.
Do you guys ever, or is it your goal to just retrieve every item that you can, or do you ever come across a situation where you feel like this item is being honored and providing good information to museum visitors?
Yes, actually, at the Gilcrease, as I said, I was shown several Iroquois items, and there were a couple of items that were purchased from a store in Canada called Gilcrease. And to us, it would be everyday musical instruments, and the tag was actually, the price tag with the store's name was still attached to the item. So I didn't put a claim in on those because I knew they weren't ceremonial, and they were everyday items.
That can be quite touching too. Now, what's been the reaction let's do a two-parter here. A, what is the reaction from the tribal government and the nation formally? And B, how is the community reacting to the return of these items?
On the repatriations I've done, I've had full support. They, being a lot of our administration people are ceremonial people, so that helps a lot in the understanding of how these items are to be taken care of. The community the same thing. We're ceremonial people, so they're very glad that there's someone doing the work that needs to be done.
And Gary, this is Chief Diebold, and also it's kind of like from our tribal perspective, we're getting a piece of our history to come home, kind of that has been gone for decades and stuff. So some of maybe the family members that actually created that piece of art or whatever, and still reside in this area, so it has an extra special meaning to them that it gets to come home. And especially with the faces, the false faces are very important to us here. So it's good for them to come home and be taken care of in the way that they should be.
It sounds like these items would still contain, let's call it, some power, some force, shall we say, that ordinary humans may not understand. But in my contacts with these kinds of situations in the past, people are always kind of a bit leery of how they treated these artifacts and purified them, smudged them, and whatever else. Did you ever get any feeling that these items would contain that kind of power?
These with the faces, that's exactly, yeah. They do have that type of power with them. There's some aspects to our medicine society objects and things that I don't really feel comfortable about discussing, but we'll say yes, that they are powerful objects.
Well, certainly we'll respect that. Chief Diebold, in dealing with this museum and a federal law being enacted and things like that, do you feel like your tribal sovereignty and the recognition of the Seneca-Cayuga Nation was there? I mean, did you feel the respect of dealing government to government entities?
Well, yeah. Now, my dealings with the museum is not as in depth as Williams's was when he made the requests and stuff for the artifacts. But yeah, when I dealt with I saw it I think it was a newspaper article, and then I contacted them, and they responded very quickly to me, and they were really nice and forthcoming on that, and told me the status on where they were and the process. But like with any governmental, I won't call it procedures. I'll call them procedures, not interference, but in procedures. There's always that bureaucracy involved where you got to have the paperwork. It's always about paperwork. So, we can only move so fast as that allows. But they've been from my dealings, they've been very forthcoming and very nice to deal with there at the Gilcrease Museum.
I just had another question. So once these things are returned to you and go through this process, are they on? You said they go on a national registry. So are they officially registered to your tribe?
The provenance that comes with the item says that they belong to us. Like, so when they go on the national register, that's because, okay, so we're the Seneca-Cayuga here in Oklahoma. So in New York and Canada, there are Senecas and there are Cayugas. Sometimes the provenance on the item belongs to them, and in this case, it belongs to us. If the provenance was like kind of shady or gray area, or we didn't know for sure that it was from our area right here in Oklahoma, then they would have the right to claim the items also. But in this case, since it says of Oklahoma, collected in Grove, then there's no question that they do belong to us. So that's what the National Register does. It allows them a chance to repatriate their items. Because, like, if I didn't see it or if I didn't know, it was there, it would still have a chance to go back to an Iroquois, tribe. So.
Very interesting, and we could definitely talk about it all day, but I think we're running out of time. So is there anything else you guys would like to add?
No, I don't believe so.
Let me fire this question in. Is there an estimated time when you will actually receive these objects back?
I think that it went into the National Registry on the 28th of June. So it would be 30 days after that. The museum would notify me of any kind of counterclaim or anything. And I think we would take possession shortly after.
All right, gentlemen, we want to thank you so much for taking time to talk with us and kind of fill us in on a very important subject. I think it's becoming more and more important to many Native nations across our country here. So, Mado, we want to say thank you again, and we wish you well, and let us know when they come home.
Will do. Thank you, Gary. Morgan, it's nice speaking with you.
You too. Mado.
No.
All right, we're going to take a pause here, and we're going to get our second interview on the line. These will be the staff members and administrators from the Gilcrease Museum who are making this happen from their end of it. So please stay with us here on Mvskoke Radio.
Who am I? Am I Indian? Just 'cause I'm a girl from the res, don't make things up about me. What if I move away? Then who am I? Some kids try meth just to escape, but then I think about my grandma, my little brother, my beadwork, my poetry, and I think, I like who I am, and I know meth is not for me.
Check out ncai.org, a message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America and the National Congress of American Indians.
Who am I? Am I Native? I don't want people assuming things because I'm Indian. I just want to be me. But how do I live in two worlds? Some guys just check out by doing meth. But that ain't for me. Because I see my family, my friends, my drum making, my future. There are a lot of cool things about being who I am. And meth isn't one of them.
Learn more at ncai.org, a message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America and the National Congress of American Indians.
I started doing it when I was 11. I wanted to be just like my big brother. And some of my friends were already doing it. We got hooked fast. I just can't get enough. I'm Jacob, and I'm addicted to playing the drums.
There's lots of stuff that makes it cool to be Native. Doing meth isn't one of them. Find something better to do. Check out ncai.org, a message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America and the National Congress of American Indians.
I started doing it when I was 11. I wanted to be just like my big brother. And some of my friends were already doing it. We got hooked fast. I just can't get enough. I'm Jacob, and I'm addicted to playing the drums.
There's lots of stuff that makes it cool to be Native. Doing meth isn't one of them. Find something better to do. Check out ncai.org, a message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America and the National Congress of American Indians.
Okay, we are back here on Mvskoke Radio here on 1240 The Brew in beautiful downtown Mogi. Morgan Taylor sitting in studio with me. We are preparing to speak with the folks from the Gilcrease Museum about this repatriation of the artifacts to the Seneca Seneca-Cayuga Nation. So if we could get our guests to identify themselves, please.
Yes, hello. My name is Laura Bryant. I'm the Anthropology Collections Manager and NAGPRA Coordinator here at Gilcrease.
Howdy, folks. Would you forget Chelsea Herr? Hello, my name is Chelsea Herr, and I am the Curator for Indigenous Art and Culture here at Gilcrease.
And good morning. My name is Susan Neal, and I'm Executive Director of Gilcrease Museum. It's nice to be with you.
Okay, well, let's start with the top boss there, Ms. Neal. We, of course, have just spoken with the Seneca-Cayuga chief, Mr. Diebold, about the items, and Morgan and I have been talking with them about the repatriation going on in progress. Oh, we've got some nasty interference here. Can you hear that on your end of it?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Okay.
No, we don't. Do you still hear it?
All right, now that's better. So we'll just ask you all to speak up a little bit. Sometimes our Fred Flintstone system over here gives us a hard time. Now, again, Ms. Neal, we talked with the tribal representatives there, and they gave us their feelings about this whole situation. So let's start with you. What are your thoughts and feelings? Yeah, you have feelings about sending these artifacts back to their nation of origin.
First of all, I would say that it was actually the good work of my team who made this possible, but it is the overarching goal of the museum to be in collaboration and in compliance with, well, first of all, in collaboration with tribes and tribal communities, and then to be in compliance with NAGPRA. And we have been doing many consultations, and I'll let Laura tell you about that in a little bit, but my feelings about this particular opportunity is very positive. It's an honor when you know that you are getting to be a part of a process that is helping the return of objects that are of cultural relevance and important to another community. And as a museum, that's something that we have a responsibility to do.
Well, they had really but nothing but positive things to say, and I'm just kind of curious as to the history with these items. Do you guys know how long you have had them, where they've been stored, what you guys have been doing with them, and things of that nature?
I'll let Laura speak to that.
Hi, this is Laura. These items in particular were originally collected by Thomas Gilcrease, who typically purchased large collections. And so we know of some of the specific collections that he purchased that included these items. And so they have been in the possession of the museum since around 1955, when Thomas Gilcrease transferred his collection to the city of Tulsa. And so they've been housed in this facility since that time. The facility's gone through many different updates in how we care for the collection, and the collection is definitely much more professionally managed and cared for now. And whenever we had consultation with the Seneca-Cayuga representative, we worked specifically with him to make sure that these items were cared for in culturally appropriate ways. And so that's something that we always really strive to have a conversation about and try to incorporate as much as possible during these consultations and collections reviews.
So did Thomas Gilcrease leave a paper trail for you guys to know what was what and who it belonged to and where it should go?
Not always. So we do have some provenance information about some items, but unfortunately some collectors and even collectors he purchased items from were not always very good about identifying where they got specific items or who they purchased them from or even who they belong to. So So there, in these particular cases, we did have them culturally identified as Iroquois with some specific information, but a lot of the items that's not the case for. So it's kind of a mixed bag, which you find in basically all museum collections.
So repatriating items has become very, it just seems like it's becoming more and more a thing for the items to be returned to their tribes. Is this, have y'all been dealing with that a lot lately?
Yeah, so we have in the past several years tried to be much more proactive in our practice of NAGPRA. In the past, a lot of museums were much more reactive in trying to just respond to tribes who came to them. We really tried to reach out specifically to tribes and invite those consultations and collections reviews in order to further the NAGPRA practice. NAGPRA has been a law for over 30 years now, and there's still so much work that has to be done. And I feel like it's starting to pick up in the museum field as more people who grew up with NAGPRA being present in their education and just a normal thing. I feel like it's starting to pick up a lot, which is a really positive direction for museums to go in.
Let's follow that up a little bit here. Now, getting into my own personal ancient history here, as a young reporter, I actually did a piece for NPR on repatriation of human remains, and we focused on that. And actually was taken into the collection, these towering stacks of drawers, and they opened up a couple of drawers, and you could see the bones. And first of all, personally, that hit me with a lot of emotion to see that. Mm-hmm. But some of the staff there were, let's say, a little bit reluctant to discuss the subject of repatriation, or as let's just be plain, they were reluctant to let the stuff go, in other words. But they were respectful to me, and we walked through the process and talked about what was going on there. Now, this, I think, was an attitude that many, I won't say all, of course, many museums and staff members took this position. Now, would you see a real change in that thinking and emotional reactions? I noticed that you did say something about it, but how do you feel about kind of a shift in thinking?
I would say it's been very intentional, as Laura noted. This is Susan Neal again, to pursue consultation and to be proactive. That has really begun in, would you say, the last 4 years?
Yeah, 4 to 5.
The last 4 to 5 years, and I can only speak to those particular years here at Gilcrease. I will have been here 4 years in August. And I believe that, again, it's been a cultural shift internally, and we have a team here that has helped educate all of us, myself included, about the importance of this work and why it is not just necessary, but I think I mentioned the word an honor, to return objects to their cultural home as they are determined to be within the either cultural patrimony or within the criteria of NAGPRA. We don't want to hold objects that truly belong in ceremonial, cultural meaning to tribes that belong with those tribes, not in our museums. If the tribes so desire for us to maintain these objects, even after they have identified them as falling into the NAGPRA criteria, that's something we want to work with the tribes on as well. How we take care of these things is just as important as should the tribe wish that we maintain them here. That's been an education process. I really am grateful to Laura coming into my office several years ago and saying, I really think we need to bring in a professional to help us walk through this, and we've done it ever since. She's led us on a path to be proactive, and I think that's the path we want to stay on.
So you do have instances where tribes prefer that the items be left there for whatever reason it be.
So we have, but we are open to having relationships where we still have possession of certain items or ancestors while they are waiting to be reinterred, or for there to be a place for those items to safely go. And so that is an arrangement that that we discuss with our tribal partners as we go further into the consultation process, and especially once we have gone through a repatriation. They maintain legal control of items, and we work really closely with them in having any kind of agreements for how to care for those items, and monitoring for access and that sort of thing. So that is something that we work really closely with our tribal partners on if that is identified as a need.
Well, I don't know if any of you guys have any tribal affiliation, but when you learn about these items and you've learned that you've had them for so long, what is that feeling like? Do you get nervous or scared or honored, or what's that feeling like knowing you've had something so powerful and spiritual in your possession?
For me personally, and this is Laura, it's kind of sad that we've had these items and that they were removed from their communities, and especially the ancestors who were removed, and reading through some of the like when collectors make notes or have provenance, it's really heart-wrenching, honestly. And so the work of some of these consultations is extremely rewarding, because we are working to try to heal some of this intergenerational trauma. But at the same time, it takes an emotional toll on everyone involved, both on the museum end and the tribe end.
Yeah, it goes hand in hand in a way, because it's like, if you guys didn't have them or a museum didn't have them, who knows where they'd be because of what tribes had to go through and what they had to leave behind. And so even now, just in 2021, in the past few years, being able to get these objects home is like a reunification for everybody. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the certain objects, the 3 false faces and the turtle rattles, or the 2 turtle rattles. Were you guys using those on any kind of display or anything like that?
I have no idea what might have happened 20, 50 years ago, right. Since we don't have records for that. But no, these items have not been displayed or published or been available to the public.
Have y'all ever had an instance where you did lose artifacts that were on display due to a repatriation?
That has happened. Whenever we have, there's been some items that were identified as NAGPRA that were previously unknown as NAGPRA items that had been on display at one point. And so we make full disclosure with the tribal representative for that. We're not trying to hide anything. We're just trying to do better going forward into the future, and trying to be proactive and having these conversations before anything goes on display in the future, so that way that doesn't happen again.
What was your reaction when this idea of repatriation first was brought up by people from Seneca-Cayuga? I mean, how did you react, or what were you thinking then?
I was excited. So we had been working on some other repatriations and consultations at the time, and so I was really excited whenever he had reached out. These were items that I had flagged for reaching out to them in the near future, and so I was really happy that he had reached out and that we were able to arrange something in a meeting so quickly. And it was really wonderful working with him. He was really easy to work with, and we were able to move this repatriation along relatively quickly, considering the process just takes a while sometimes with paperwork.
Were you ever just like, gosh, this stuff has been here for 50, 60 years and nobody's claimed it?
To an extent, I know that just like museums, the tribes are also overwhelmed with work. I mean, the museums have hundreds of tribes to work with and reach out to, but the tribes have thousands of museums that they have to keep on their radar and reach out to, and who are reaching out to them, and it just takes a long time to do some of this work. And so I was really glad that we were able to have this conversation, and that he was able to come out and we start this process. But I know that everyone has, especially tribes, have a lot on their plate with this kind of work.
And one thing too, this is Chelsea, her. One thing that we're making a very serious and committed effort to doing as a museum, as an institution moving forward, is maintaining those relationships with tribes beyond just, not to say just repatriations, but beyond the repatriation process, right? So ensuring that once those claims and those returns are completed, that our relationships with those communities continue to be fostered, and that essentially everything that we do in relationship to Indigenous peoples, to Indigenous cultures and histories, is done in collaboration. And so that really the hope would be that moving forward, things might not take as long anymore if those relationships already exist. So that's, going kind of beyond the letter of the law as far as NAGPRA goes, to actually get at the ethics and the really what I feel is cultural responsibility and accountability, to go beyond simply what federal legislation says, and foster those relationships even more.
Now, in our community, our Oklahoma community, and I would presume nationally and even internationally, the Gilcrease has quite a reputation for collection and care of Native American art and culture, things like that. There are 39 tribes here in the state. How do you feel about having to essentially carry that kind of responsibility?
That's a big question. I personally, so I'm Choctaw. I'm a citizen of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, and so going into the museum field, whether at Gilcrease or another institution, there's a certain kind of amount of preparation, I guess, for myself going into it, knowing what those histories of collecting and museum practices have looked like. And there is definitely an added layer of accountability that not only am I, responsible at the museum for certain things, but I'm also held responsible to my own community. And I will say that I'm relatively new at Gilcrease. I just passed my 1-year anniversary as an employee here. And I will say that pressure and some of the nerves that I felt walking into, museums are inherently colonial institutions. And so walking into any institution with that history of settler colonial kind of mindset is always going to be nerve-wracking. But there's also something to be said for having Indigenous peoples and allies do this work in colonial institutions to dismantle some of those colonial structures and histories that have been so traumatic. So there is definitely an added weight of carrying some of that responsibility, but knowing that the work and sometimes the emotional toll is well worth it, because it's not for us. It's not something that only benefits us as individuals or us as an institution, but benefits all of the communities that we're working with. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I think tribes need to be represented everywhere, and we appreciate your work. I kind of just had a fun question. What's some of the coolest things that you guys have returned before or have had in your museum before that were tribal affiliated?
The term cool is so these are precious. I know they're probably all defined as cool.
I have one example. It hasn't been repatriated necessarily, but recently, and I'm just going to speak to this because it involves my tribe. But when I came to the museum, I was very surprised and pleased to find that we have a pipe in our collection. It's a Mississippian pipe that has been passed down through the LaFleur family, which is a prominent Choctaw family, and a few chiefs have come from that line. But it was used at the signing of the Treaty of Dancing Rabbit Creek, which was our removal treaty. It's what essentially forced us out of our homelands in Mississippi and up into Indian Territory starting in 1830. And this pipe not only being used as a symbol of diplomacy and peaceful relationships between maybe some contentious parties involved, but is also Mississippian in origin, right? So even before what we were living in as 6 towns in Mississippi at that time has a much longer history. And so to see something with that historical lineage and significance and to see it maintained within our own community for so long was so exciting. And that right now, we're working with the Choctaw Cultural Center they actually have it ready to go for when they open in a couple of weeks. So that is now on loan to them because in my opinion, it makes more sense, right, for the Choctaw Cultural Center to be able to display and contextualize and educate people using that item than we would necessarily here at Gilcrease.
All right, we're about out of time here, but let me toss one more question at you. The First Americans Museum is scheduled to come online later this year, and from what we've seen of it, it's quite an elaborate operation, comprehensive in its offerings and things like that. Now, will the Gilcrease be working with them, and what are your thoughts about something like that opening up here in Oklahoma?
Yes, I mean, as much as possible and as much as the First Americans Museum is interested in working with us. And in fact, we have loaned a few items to them for their opening later this fall. Absolutely. I can tell you my thoughts about FAM it's been a long time coming, and to have a cultural center and museum that is representative of all of the 39 tribes in Oklahoma is an astounding and really important feat. And it's something that, as much as we can out here in Tulsa, that we would want to support their efforts as well. I think that's true. That's something that we've discussed as a staff here of any tribal cultural center or museum is lending support where we can for their own kind of ends, right? Not for our own purposes, but to be sure that we're participating in reciprocal relationships with tribes, and to me that includes the First Americans Museum.
Okay, we've got about 30 seconds here. Now finally, The museum will offer all kinds of brand new opportunities. Do you think it might sort of change the scenery and the attitudes toward native artifacts and museums and things?
Absolutely, that's the goal. That's one of the things that we're working towards as a team and in collaboration with our tribal partners. One of the things we're working on is redeveloping or relooking at our policies and procedures and how they might better reflect some of the current attitudes towards Indigenous patrimony and representation of Indigenous cultures, and really have that be part of the entire institutional culture here and framework.
Okay, listen, we have to go. We're out of time. Sorry to cut you off there like that. We want to say thank you so much for you all taking your time out to chat with us about such an important museum topic.
Moto, everybody. It was nice speaking with y'all.
Okay, we're out of here. You've been listening to Mvskoke Radio. Join us again next week for more local, tribal, and community news and updates. Moto.